Well, Megan, as with Homefront, you selected Paradise Lost, which makes sense as they're a two-parter. You want to tell us why you selected this one?
Absolutely. So I think it's really the two episodes together that I think. Well, they're it's one episode in two parts. But as I said last in our last episode, this is I think a really transitional point, both in the plot of the series and how the war with the Dominion is going to develop, and also with how Sisko is going to be interacting with and engaging with and understanding Starfleet and the Federation, because the cracks are beginning to show. And this is the episode where everything they thought they had discovered, all of the work they thought they had done, all of the actions that they took last time to protect Earth and protect the Federation, they start to realize they were wrong. And with this kind of dawning horror, they realized the way they were wrong is much worse than any of them really could have imagined. So I think this, I find it almost a painful episode to watch in terms of what this must be doing to Sisko as someone who has sacrificed so much to Starfleet and to the Federation over the years, to be pulled into and have to, find out and discover this kind of betrayal that happened. I think it was a really impactful moment. And I'm really excited to hear what you both thought of it, because I thought there was a lot in here that was kind of, it moves fast. It's almost like a little bit of a mystery, a whodunit, a discovery session. But the things that they're discovering are actually, in the context of the world, quite horrifying. What is going on and what had happened. So I'm very excited to get into it. Initial thoughts. Murphy, you want to go first?
Yeah, I like this is something that we've talked about before. This is a much more in your face. Why isn't Starfleet acting like Starfleet? We see them as these paragons of virtue and whatever. And you get hints of this throughout TNG. There's a few moments where it's sort of like you get the idea that Starfleet isn't as holier than thou and kind of pious as we like to think. But this episode is really in your face, and it's like I said in the last episode. He talks to the guy who sent out Red Squad, and he talks to the Red Squad cadet. When he talks to that Red Squad cadet, the level of just smugness on this kid's face, and it really comes from this: I'm a human, I'm in Starfleet. This kind of we rule the galaxy attitude that this kid has is what's at the heart of the Federation kind of getting rotten and soft. Yeah, it's a good whodunit, but yeah, it's not somewhere you want to go, like you said.
What did you think, Tom?
So, a couple of different thoughts. First of all, once again, comparing this to the U.S. political scene, I had extraordinary feelings of paranoia, and you can see how just the thought of what a shapeshifter could do, even in the few scenes we saw them. I think it was when the bird flew away in Homefront, and in this case, in this episode, the scene with where the shapeshifter took the role of Chief O'Brien in his discussion with Sisko. You can see how just everyone was afraid, and if you didn't take the test and passed it, and even if you did, maybe there's still a question. So you begin to see how, at least here in the States, you keep saying they stole elections enough, some people are going to believe it, and that they're stealing it now. So you saw that paranoia. The more I thought about I have to go into the scene with O'Brien and Sisko. I absolutely loved it. And Colm Meaney plays Chief, I think, in one style of acting. And in this scene, he was completely different. And I absolutely loved it. But the more I thought about what the Dominion character, what the shapeshifter was saying was, we don't really have to do a lot. We just have to make you think we're doing a lot, and maybe not even think we're doing a lot. All you have to do is think about us, and you go gaga. And so the more I thought about that, the more I saw the invidiousness of what the shapeshifters could do, yet they were choosing not to do it, at least yet.
Yeah.
So it was I was a huge fan of Fringe, and I loved The Watchers.
Oh,
And it seemed like
so good.
all they had to do was watch and just
Yeah.
see, you know, this entire Paradise Lost while they're sitting there doing nothing, basically. And,
Mhm.
you know, we haven't even gotten to Red Squad or, you know, any of the mechanics of the revolt or the overthrow. So I was really intrigued by, and once again, they, you know, we say in America, when we're overthrown, it will not be from people without, it will be from people within the country. So I really thought about that in the context of this episode.
You raise a really good point with that scene with O'Brien. That scene between Changeling O'Brien and Sisko has to be, I think, one of the best short scenes in the series. Specifically when O'Brien says, "You solids are so impatient," and this is the crux of the Dominion, is that I think they say this later. They're not thinking in terms of what's going to happen next year. They're thinking 10, 20, 100, 200 years down the line. You'll find that, you know, will often say the Dominion's endured for 10,000 years and will endure for another 10,000, you know, long after the Federation has crumbled to dust. And this is this Dominion belief of like, we sow chaos so that we can reorder everything, but it takes time. We're timeless. The female changeling says that to Odo. She's like, time is a concern for other people. The Dominion is this patient beast that can just, like you said, just wait it out, not have to worry about, you know, the immediacy of their actions. It's a really, really good scene. I'm glad you mentioned it because it's got to be like, it's so pivotal to so many things that take place in the whole series.
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts about that too, and one is just kind of the idea of like talking to such a confident opponent. How terrifying that must be, especially because according to all available evidence, Changeling O'Brien is completely right about everything. They barely have to do anything. They just have to like knock over a little domino, and then, you know, the Federation, Earth, they just start tearing each other and themselves apart.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I thought that was so interesting about that is because, I mean, Sisko knew he was at war before, but now he knows they're at war, and there's so much of a better sense of what the scale is that they're going to be dealing with. I think he had no idea really before, and now he's also in the position of he doesn't feel he can trust Starfleet anymore. That's huge, because that makes DS9, I mean, plot-wise, you know, it's really the last line of defense. If you can't trust the Federation, because, and hopefully we'll talk about this a little bit, because you've got admirals like Leighton going rogue, and maybe even for ardent patriotism, but still outside the chain of command. Really, really interesting stuff.
Well, do you remember that moment in where he was forced to choose in the Maquis, and his best friend from in the past, you know, they're like, well, I was an admiral. I was supposed to help these people, but I got no help from Starfleet or the Federation. What am I supposed to do? I'm watching them be brutalized and butchered. So of course, like, if Starfleet's not going to help me and the people I care for, like, he knows, and he tries to convince Sisko. He's like, something's wrong. Like, this should not be happening. We should not have sold out these people with a treaty. And Sisko's starting to come around to it too. He'll never fully come to the, you know, the aid of the Maquis because of his whole thing with Eddington, but he's starting to realize that something is wrong at this point. And I often think about, if he were to sort of look back and talk to his friend, what would his friend be like? Well, I told you, like, you should have woken up sooner. Anyway.
So I wanted to pick up on your point, Murphy, about the smugness of the cadet. He reminded me of every frat rat I've ever was a frat brother with or knew. And that's exactly how we all acted. Exactly how we all looked. So yeah, it was spot on. He was definitely sitting at the cool kids table and the cafeteria at the school lunch. But the takedown of the planetary system that we saw at the end of Homefront and leading into this episode. I was also intrigued by the dialogue, particularly between it was Sisko and Odo on what went wrong. Because remember, this was 1999. So 25 years ago, and they were talking about a major bug put into a computer that crashed it. And we could have had that conversation last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really interesting. That I've always thought DS9 presaged a lot of tech that we have, literally today. And my favorite is at some point we'll talk about how you sign a contract by putting your thumbprint down.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically an iPhone now. So anyway, I just thought that part was interesting. What did you guys think about the way Sisko sort of maneuvered Leighton into not simply showing his hand, but taking him down? Was that plausible, believable within the context of this story?
I think it was within the context of the story. I felt like it really did have kind of whodunit vibes to the episode a little bit, and it I think beggared belief a little bit. Just to think that there would be such a high-ranking Starfleet officer that would do all of this, and I found it was a very fast-paced episode. Like, things kept happening and things kept changing, and all of this new information is being presented really, really quickly. But I think it high level made sense, and I guess it's not shocking that a high-ranking military officer is going to go to a military response to a problem with or without kind of Federation approval.
Yeah, he sort of. I mean, Sisko, he navigates the people that he has to interact with in this really well. He's head of Starfleet security on Earth, but he's still a captain. And you see this really well when he's talking to the administrator of Starfleet Academy, and the guy's like, I was told this wasn't going to be on the books. Like, thanks for catching this. But he orders Sisko. He speaks to him with the authority of a superior, and he's like, listen to me very closely, Captain. I want you to delete everything about this, et cetera, et cetera. It's got to be a weird position for Sisko to be in, because you are in charge of security for the planet, for the capital of the Federation, but you don't have the authority to really be on the same level as these admirals and administrators that you're dealing with. So I gotta wonder, at some point, during the episode off screen, does Sisko sort of realize that maybe something's not right here, maybe I'm being used as a patsy? And Leighton definitely sets him up as one. But yeah, he sort of deals with him really well, which speaks to Sisko's character and his ability to sort of negotiate with people really well, and see people's ability to get things done, or ability to communicate with them.
That's a great insight, Murphy. This part of the story is based on one of my absolute most favorite movies of all time, called 7 Days in May, which is a John Frankenheimer movie about the attempted military coup in the United States. And they set up a patsy, of course, to take the fall. And I know in our last episode, I said it made complete sense to me that Sisko would be made chief of planetary security because of his relationship with Leighton. But maybe you're onto something. Maybe he always was there as a potential fall guy if something or everything went wrong. So I think that's a great insight.
I guess the same thing that made him a good candidate to be the head of Starfleet security is the same reason he'd be the first one you could stop trusting and pin the blame on as soon as the situation changed a little bit.
Right?
Yeah, outsider, and again has had much more exposure to the enemy.
Right. You could say that, if he joins Leighton, great. Leighton's got another, loyal guy in his pocket. If he doesn't, you could say, well, he's clearly been, influenced by the Dominion, and, that's why he's doing all this. It's a good choice. It could go either way for him. I mean,
what did each of you think about? Because this is the thing kind of that struck me as like the most shocking, I guess, to my sensibilities, was the use by Admiral Leighton of these students to commit treason. And like, okay, maybe he's a confident, blustering frat rat, and thank you for that, Tom, so much. By the way, I'm love that. But I mean, a kid, like, you know, maybe under 22 in the academy, highly able to be influenced, working really hard for esteem, thinking that every decision is going to affect the rest of your career. Knowingly, like, admitting to treason without kind of understanding that it was. But like the use of, and I know they're not technically children, but the use of young people in this way, controlling young people, I found that just so disturbing. That was a ploy that any admiral or high ranking, like, what did you guys think of that? Or did you kind of, did it ping it all as a weird or an off thing?
Well, for me, no, because it seemed to me to be a very planned way to go outside the system to get control of a group that they could obviously control, but there wouldn't be a lot of scrutiny on. And if you say, well, you know, we're off for maneuvers somewhere because we're the elite group from Starfleet Academy, I think that gives you a plausible cover story for what Red Squad started to do and did over these 2 episodes. So I guess I wasn't as offended as you.
What do you think?
Red Squad is legit the worst. You're going to take a bunch of... I mean, they're also the best. You find out later that, you know, all of Red Squad is gone. You're going to find out in a later episode called I think it's called Valiant, that all of Red Squad was basically shipped onto another Defiant class vessel and just sent to drive around the entire length of the Federation on a training exercise, so they would be gone for a long period of time. But in that episode, you encounter lots of them. Jake and Nog end up on the ship, and they end up talking to them. And they are, beyond a shadow of a doubt, almost every single one of them horrible human beings. They are... they're cocky and they're cruel and they're just arrogant beyond belief and totally committed to their own sort of belief in their superiority, which ultimately gets them all killed. But yeah, Red Squad's a terrible group of people, and I could totally see the joy, like I said, smugness, but also a certain sense satisfaction about having pulled this off, like a kid, you know, successfully pulling a prank. That's all he sees it as, you know? It's a training exercise, but he's so smug and happy because he pulled one over on everybody. Because of how... Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's what bugs me so much, though, is that this is the future of Starfleet, and they, you know, this is the time when they can be molded into fine, upstanding people, and they're being used in this way, and they're being turned into these awful frat rats.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it really troubled me, that part of it, that kind of... It makes me a Federation hater, or a Starfleet hater, because I just think it was such a misuse of this youth, and I think they were so poorly served by having had this. Like, yes, they were willing, like they were eager to do it. But no one's that bright at 19. You know, they need responsible people to be teaching them the right thing to do, and they didn't get that
at Starfleet Academy of all places. Yeah,
where they should have gotten it, and I think it was a waste of young people.
Yeah, because Federation morality is slowly falling by the wayside. There's nothing to prop it up, right? It's just
We're moral and ethical till we're not.
Yeah.
Not the inherent moral flexibility we see on the front lines of the frontier at DS9.
No, that's it.
No. All right. Well, I guess then let's wrap up this one. Do you think this episode worked, and does it work as part 2 of a 2-part series in the middle of the season? Megan?
Yeah, definitely I do. I think that's why I chose this, because I think this was the big shift. Because we knew everything was getting bad and things were getting scary, and now we've realized and understood down to our bones, both us and all of the characters, how much worse it actually is than we thought. Now we're ready for the second half of the season.
Murphy?
Yeah. I like it. It's a good conclusion to the first one. Like I said, that scene with Changeling O'Brien is pretty choice. That's probably one of the best scenes in the series. a few weird things. Odo busting Sisko out of prison at the end of the episode, and then saying something like, "I helped redesign the security parameters for this facility." In what world is a changeling allowed to revamp Starfleet security procedures? I find that a little weird, but move the plot along. It works well. The fight between the Defiant and the Excelsior, that could have had much far-reaching consequences. I also don't know how an Excelsior class ship is going to go up against a Defiant class ship, but that's just Trek nerdom. But yeah, I like it. I think it's a good episode. It's fun, and it's a neat way of sort of breaking up the sort of monotony of the season. Yeah, because we're going to go into like heavier and heavier and heavier stuff from here on, going into season 5 with the Klingons and into Dominion War.
We didn't even discuss that fight scene, and I thought that we would see the Defiant just destroy that Excelsior class ship.
Yeah.
And we didn't. So I thought this episode worked. I enjoyed sort of seeing the arc of what we started to see in Homefront, and I made a very poor joke about moral flexibility, but the moral flexibility that I saw the first time I watched this series, or the first or second or third time I watched this series, out on the frontier was not something you would have expected on Earth. And my remark about, yes, we're more moral and ethical till we're not. And we were not. And Starfleet was not. So you're right. It does presage a lot of some much heavier discussions and episodes going forward. And I can't wait to see them and talk to you guys about them.
Yes.
All right.